She said it like it was something kind, but the way she avoided eye contact made it feel like a quiet betrayal I wasn't supposed to notice. Her phone lit up again on the kitchen counter, and this time she didn't even try to flip it over. I stood there, staring at a message that wasn't meant for me, and realized I was already losing something I hadn't agreed to give away. I can't block him. He's going through a hard time and needs me, she said calm, almost rehearsed. I looked at her for a long second, then nodded slowly and said, I understand, go ahead. Her name was Sloane Harrington. We lived in a quiet part of Westchester County, just outside Greenwich, where everything looked stable from the outside. Clean streets, glass kitchens, polished lives that made it seem like nothing ever really broke. But inside that house, something had already started to crack. Sloane was the kind of woman people admired without really knowing. Soft-spoken, composed, always emotionally available, especially when someone needed her. That was the part everyone praised. That was also the part that was slowly pulling her away from me. The him she was talking about was Nolan Prescott, an ex she hadn't spoken to in years. Or at least, that's what I had believed. He had resurfaced a few weeks earlier with a simple message. I'm not doing well. I don't know who else to talk to. At first, I didn't think much of it. People go through things. Sometimes they reach out to familiar voices. It felt human, reasonable. But what started as a message turned into daily conversations. Daily conversations turned into late-night calls. And late-night calls turned into something that no longer felt like support. It felt like intimacy. I didn't accuse her. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even question her directly. Instead, I watched. I watched how she smiled at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. I watched how she would step outside to take certain calls. I watched how she became emotionally unavailable in moments when I needed her the most. And the strange part was, she didn't think she was doing anything wrong. One night, while we were having dinner, her phone buzzed again. She didn't pick it up immediately. She looked at me first, almost like she was checking how much I had already noticed. Then she said, he's just having a rough time again. I put my fork down slowly. Is he the only one going through something right now? I asked. She hesitated. Not long enough to create conflict, but long enough to confirm something deeper. Why are you making this into something it's not? She replied. That question stayed in my head longer than it should have. Because the truth was, I wasn't making it into anything. I was just seeing it for what it was becoming. Before we go further, let me ask you something. If your partner stays emotionally connected to someone from their past under the excuse of helping, would you trust it? Or would you feel something slowly slipping away? I didn't push her after that. Not because I didn't care, but because I wanted to understand how far this would go if I said nothing. Silence reveals more than confrontation ever does. Over the next few days, things shifted in small but undeniable ways. She started dressing differently. Not drastically, but intentionally. More effort, more awareness. Her energy changed, not toward me, but away from me. And that's when I realized something most people ignore until it's too late. It's not always physical distance that breaks a relationship first. It's emotional relocation. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. Her car was in the driveway. The house was quiet, but her voice wasn't. She was in the living room, laughing. Not politely, not casually, but freely. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard in months. I stood there for a second before walking in. She froze when she saw me. The call ended almost instantly. That was quick, I said calmly. It was nothing, she replied. But the way she avoided my eyes told me everything that her words refused to say. I walked past her without reacting. No anger, no confrontation, just distance. Because at that moment, I understood something clearly. She wasn't choosing between two people. She was choosing where to place her emotional energy. And I was no longer the priority. That night, I didn't argue. I didn't bring it up again. Instead, I made a decision. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, internally. I stopped competing for attention that should have been given freely. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, made coffee, sat alone, and for the first time, I asked myself a question I had been avoiding. What am I actually holding on to here? Because love isn't just about staying. It's about being chosen, consistently, without hesitation. Days passed. Nothing changed on her end. But everything changed on mine. I became less available, less reactive, less emotionally invested in conversations that felt one-sided. And that's when she started noticing. "Are you okay?" she asked one evening. I looked at her and smiled slightly. "I'm fine." And for the first time, I meant something completely different than what she heard. She wasn't used to that version of me. The version that didn't chase, didn't question, didn't seek reassurance. And slowly, that made her uncomfortable. Because attention that disappears quietly creates more confusion than attention that leaves loudly. A few days later, she brought him up again. "He's really struggling right now," she said. I nodded. "I hope he finds the help he needs." That was it. No reaction. No tensión. And that's when something shifted in her expression. Confusion. Uncertainty. Because she was expecting resistance. And when it didn't come, she didn't know how to process it. Let me ask you something here. When someone starts pulling away, do you chase harder, or do you step back and let them feel the space they created? Because that decision changes everything. Weeks went by. The calls became less frequent. Not because of anything I said, but because of something she started feeling. Distance. The same distance she had created, now reflecting back at her. One evening, she sat across from me and said, "Do you even care anymore?" I looked at her for a moment before answering. I care enough to not force something that isn't being given willingly. Silence filled the room. And for the first time, she had no response. Because what she had mistaken for patience was actually quiet acceptance. And what she thought was unconditional presence had limits she never noticed. I didn't ask her to block him. I didn't give ultimatums. I didn't create rules. I just stopped trying to hold on to something that was already slipping. And that's when reality started catching up with her. Because attention from someone new feels exciting until it replaces something stable. And when stability disappears, excitement doesn't feel the same anymore. One night, she walked into the room and said softly, "I think I made a mistake." I didn't respond immediately, because by that point, I had already learned something she hadn't. Sometimes the biggest loss in a relationship isn't when someone else enters. It's when you quietly stop fighting for what was supposed to be yours.